Hi, Cassie. Can you make me a host so I can share my screen?
You're a co-host now.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Christina Postolowski. I'm the program manager for the Mobile Home Park Oversight Program in the Colorado Division of Housing. We are part of the Colorado Department of Local Affairs. I see there is a hand raised. Corey Mills, I'm going to allow you to talk. Folks can also put questions in the chat and we will have ample time for questions at the end. Looks like the hand is no longer raised. Well, thank you everyone for joining. We're going to go ahead and get started. This meeting is being recorded. So if for some reason you have to leave early or want to go back to the recording, that recording will be available after the meeting on our website. And it may take a couple hours to get posted, but you can contact us as well if you need a link. So the intended audience for this meeting is manufactured housing community owners and managers. The meeting is open to the public, so if you are a resident or a local government or nonprofit, you're welcome to stay on the meeting. But we are aiming to have this educational session for park owners and managers. So I will just let everybody know up front, if we get to the point where we are running out of time for questions, we are going to prioritize questions from community owners and managers for this meeting. If we receive a request, we're happy to do another conversation if there are a lot of resident questions that don't get answered at a separate time. You can also email us or leave us a voicemail on our toll-free number if you have specific questions that don't get answered during today's presentation. So to ask a question, you can go ahead and use the chat box. It's nice to see everybody chatting who they are, where they're from in the chat. If you are on the phone, you can dial *9 to raise your hand and ask a question. If you are using the app, the Zoom app, or on a computer, there's also a raise hand function. I would say if you're able to chat while the presentation's happening, that's probably a faster way to get your questions answered. When we come to a question break, raising hands or dialing *9 to request to ask a question is perfectly fine. One thing that we are not going to do in this presentation today is we're not going to answer questions or respond to questions about individual parks or individual complaints. Because this is public and educational and going to be on our website, we'd like to keep the information more general. If you have specific questions for your community or concerns you'd like to raise, please go ahead and send us an email or call us at our toll-free phone number. I'll also be providing contact information for myself and some of our other staff at the end of the presentation. So today we are going to be talking about the DOLA, Department of Local Affairs, Notice of Homeowner and Resident Rights. We're going to talk a little bit about what this notice is. Hopefully this is something you're all familiar with. A little bit about the Division of Housing's responsibilities and landlords' responsibilities around the notice. Talking about some recent compliance checks that the program has been doing in mobile home parks. And then what the consequences and penalties might be if the program discovers this notice is not properly posted. This is the English version. There is a Spanish version as well. Both versions I'll refer to as the notice or the notices, but it does include both English and Spanish, and then both pages of each notice when I'm talking about the notice or notices. So sort of the full package of information that has to be posted. So just in terms of introductions, so folks know who our current staff members are. So I'm the program manager. We have now, over the last, I guess we're in fiscal year 5 of the program. We have scaled up our staffing and grown our staff considerably, both due to legislative changes and additional money being allocated to the program by the General Assembly, as well as identifying public need and customer need, and looking for ways to improve our customer service through the program. So a lot of very colorful here, but the colors kind of track the growth of our staffing. So as a reminder, we started with 2 staff in the first year of the program, and that was both for registering all 750 communities in the state, as well as receiving and investigating complaints. We were permitted to add 2 additional positions in the second year of the program. And in the first 2 years of the program, all the positions were general, so working on registrations and complaints. Third year of the program, which was 2021-22, we realized there was a need to have dedicated staff to help with park registration questions and concerns. So we created 2 additional positions focused on registration, and sort of now have a registration team and a complaints team. This last year, we had some additional changes. So we were asked to hire an additional staff person through House Bill 22-1287 to work on mobile home park sales and the homeowner opportunity to purchase requirements. This position has been vacant for a couple of months, but I'm happy to announce that one of our program specialists will be moving into that park sale administrator role starting next week. We also brought on 2 compliance investigators to help us conduct site visits when we receive complaints that involve some physical aspect of a manufactured housing community. And our investigators are also conducting compliance checks related to the DOLA notices, and I'll talk about that more in this presentation. This coming year, we have there's the mobile home park water quality bill that was passed in 2023. That's 23-1257. So we'll be bringing on an additional coordinator on our complaint team and an assistant on our registration team to help with questions from communities and residents about that bill. That bill will mostly be implemented by another state agency, the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment, or CDPHE. But folks will notice on the registration forms this coming year, it's actually available now, there are going to be a couple new questions on the mobile home park's water source and water billing methodology as a result of that bill. So our new program assistant on the registration side will help community owners and managers with answering those questions and finding the information they need to complete that new section. The last position I just wanted to mention is we are going to be bringing on a community outreach liaison, likely before the end of this calendar year. And that individual will be working on creating more webinars like this, more customer-facing information to increase the education and outreach that the program is doing. And this community outreach liaison is going to serve both community owners and managers and help provide information that they need, as well as residents and resident homeowners. So they are going to be essentially our education specialist and a person that you'll be able to go to with requests for trainings and information. So I wanted to go over the Department of Local Affairs, or DOLA's, responsibilities when it comes to the Notice of Homeowner and Resident Rights. So the statute that created the Dispute Resolution and Enforcement Program says that DOLA is responsible for producing a notice with certain information. So we have to talk about homeowner and resident rights and responsibilities, how individuals can file a complaint, what penalties there are in the statute if a landlord retaliates against a resident for filing a complaint, as well as provide our toll-free phone number and website. The notices have to be in English and Spanish and in a format that community owners and managers can reasonably post in a community. So, you know, so far we've been able to keep the notices to 2 pages for English, 2 pages for Spanish. And we are really trying to strike a balance between including all of the crucial information and making sure that the notices do not get too long, that it becomes overly burdensome for landlords to post the notices. We anticipate the notices will stay to 2 pages, English and Spanish, when the updated notice goes out again this year. One note on a recent change, or somewhat recent change. So as of October 1st of last year, 2022, the notices have to include resident rights. So if you're not sure if you have the right notice or the right notice posted, look for this resident rights. If it has resident rights, it's the most recent notice. If it just says homeowner rights or homeowner rights and responsibilities, it is not the most up-to-date notice. So you'll need to go to our website or contact us to request copies of this most recent notice that includes homeowner and resident rights. You'll also notice at the top of the notice, there is a space for your emergency contact number for your community. So this is a requirement in statute as well, that landlords have an emergency contact number posted in the park. You're not required to put it on this sheet, but we did add space for it so that you could make sure you get your number posted and also have our notices posted. if that was easier or convenient for the community owner or manager. But that emergency contact number does have to be posted in the park, whether it's on this sheet or posted separately. One thing to note is that we do send out an updated notice each year. Typically, we send it with the registration information or registration renewal information, unless there's been a change in state law, and then we might send it separately so we get the new notices up before the changes in state law take effect. So last year, you may recall I mentioned October 1st, 2022. That was the effective date for a update bill on the Mobile Home Park Act and mobile home park sales. So we mailed the notices in September so that landlords and then residents would have current information before that new law took effect. This year, we don't anticipate a lot of changes to the notice. There may be a couple small updates. We anticipate sending the notice out in late November. And so once those notices go out, landlords then have 7 days to update their postings of the notices. We have already received the request that that the notices not arrive over the Thanksgiving holiday. So we're going to do our best to time it so they'll come probably the week after Thanksgiving, just so folks know a little bit about the timing. And that I was just talking about, one of our responsibilities is to distribute this notice to all of you community owners and managers. We do send the notices out to the person who is the primary contact for park registration. So we don't send the notices to every registration contact listed in our database. Say we have an owner, a manager, an accountant, an attorney. We're not going to send the notice out certified mail 4 times. We're going to send it out once to the person that you have indicated is the primary contact for registration communications. So if you're not sure who that is, you have an online account, you can log in and look that up. If you don't have an online account or you're having any issues accessing your account, you can contact us by email, and our registration team can assist you. So in addition to creating the notices, distributing them to all of you, the statute says that we are responsible for ensuring that landlords post the notice in clearly visible and accessible locations in every common area of the community. And the statute also says the Division of Housing shall enforce a penalty if we discover the notice is not appropriately posted. So part of the presentation today, we're going to talk a little bit about what that enforcement has been looking like and is going to look like in the coming months. We do want to work with communities, help educate communities on how to get these notices posted. We're also balancing that with our statutory requirements to ensure that these are posted, and the requirement that we do enforce a penalty if we discover it's not posted. So we're going to be talking a little bit today about compliance checks for the DOLA notices. So what are compliance checks? They are unannounced site visits to public areas of a mobile home park. They are conducted typically by our 2 compliance investigators, Stephen Eckleberry and Lindsay Jones, and both Stephen and Lindsay are helping answer questions in the chat today. And so you may see their names, hear from them directly. Compliance checks are going to also include checks in communities where we've received a complaint that the notices are not properly posted or are no longer posted. But they're also, so we're going to look at parks where we received a complaint about posting, but we're also doing site visits like spot checks to communities where we have not received a complaint to ensure the notices are posted. This was not something that we had the ability to do in the first couple of years of the program. If you remember, back to my organization chart slide, we had 2 staff who's responsible for setting up the program and getting things going. We have heard that there has been a need for compliance investigators and these types of site visits. And so that is something that we've responded to and we now have as part of our program. And so I want to talk a little bit more about why we're doing these checks. So the program is required by statute to do an annual survey or to hire an independent contractor to conduct an annual survey each year to find out whether the public's aware of the program, what they know, what their experience has been with the program and with mobile home parks in general. So the first 2 years of our surveys found that around 70% of resident homeowners had not heard about the Mobile Home Park Oversight Program, or MPOP. This was very concerning and continues to be concerning to us now that we're coming in year 5 of the fully functioning program. So what does this have to do with the homeowner notice? Well, the homeowner notice is the main way that the statute anticipated homeowners would find out about the program. And it relies on both DOLA putting out the notice and then landlords posting, maintaining, and sharing those notices to ensure that homeowners know that the program exists and know what some of their rights are under state law. We've also received complaints about the notice not being posted in certain communities, and then it is part of our statutory responsibility to ensure that the notices are being posted. So that's why we are conducting these compliance checks. So I'm going to talk next about what some of our findings have been, where we've been so far in the state. And by we, I mean primarily our investigators, Stephen and Lindsay. And then we're going to go through a refresher on the requirements for posting the notices, how you can correct issues, and hopefully before any penalties arise. So we've been doing compliance checks since April 2023. So we have about 6 months of data so far on these compliance checks. We have been to 22 out of the 64 counties in the state. In some counties, we have visited every registered mobile home park in that county. In other counties, we've visited a smaller handful based on complaints we've received or other complaint investigations that we're doing in a particular community. So at this point, over 6 months, we have gotten to almost a third of mobile home parks in the state. I do have a goal that we will do a check in every community over the next 1.5 to 2 years. So I guess the coming year to 1.5 since we're 6 months in. But we visited 232 parks so far. Here is the data by county on what we are seeing and what our compliance investigators are finding. So just a note that if we visited less than 10 communities in a county, I did not include percentages because I felt like that it was too small of a number to really come up with a percentage for the county. You will see that the results are not great. We unfortunately have been finding majority of communities in most counties don't have any notices posted at all. And then we have an additional percentage of communities that have something up, but it's not fully compliant with statute. So here's the second page of counties that we have visited. Again, we've got some where we've only been to one park. We've got some where we've been to all the parks. And overall, we found 142 parks, or 61% that don't have any notices posted right now. And additional 11% were 26 parks where there is some issue with the posting. And so we're looking at a pretty concerning number of parks, at least based on the communities we visited so far, that are not either posting or have not been maintaining the postings of the required notices. I want to express that this should be a concern for all of us. So it's a concern for residents because the notices tell them about what rights and responsibilities they have. I think it's also a concern for community owners and managers. So I know we've heard a lot from community owners and managers that it's been really hard to keep up with all of the legislative changes since 2019. And, you know, my thought is that one of the best ways to show that additional legislative changes are not needed is to demonstrate compliance with the rules and regulations that are in effect. My concern is, you know, for communities is that if legislators see these numbers, they're going to think we have to do more, we have to regulate more. And so if you're a community owner or manager who's like been struggling to cope with the regulations or does not want to see more legislative changes, I would really encourage you to get the word out to your fellow owners and managers in the state to help fix these issues. And hopefully the next 2/3 of the compliance checks that we do on homeowner notices will start looking a lot better. And then we can talk about how community owners and managers are addressing these concerns. DOLA is working on education and outreach, and we can get this corrected without more changes to the law. So that's my pitch. So here's a little bit on where the notices have to be posted and how they have to be posted. All of this information that I'm going into now is in the instructions that are mailed out with the notices. The instructions are also posted on our website. And the instructions mirror our administrative rules for the program. So if you need to check the instructions now or after this meeting, they're on our website. You can also email us and ask for a copy. The instructions are mailed out every year with the notices, so just please read through those carefully. And then again, you'll be able to come back to this presentation afterwards when it's posted on our website. So a couple different ways that you can get this information if you need a refresher, if you have a new community manager starting and want to make sure they get trained up on where the notices need to go. So the notices have to be posted in every common area of the mobile home park. Our administrative rules for the program provide some details on what those common areas are. So the notices have to be posted at every common resident mailbox location, every rent payment drop box or other rent payment location, and every community hall, recreation hall, and clubhouse. If one or more of these locations exist, the notices have to be up at these locations. The notices do need to be clearly visible and accessible to residents. So if your management office is a rent payment location, then you would need to post your notices at the management office. Typically, most management offices are not open 24/7. So our recommendation would be to post it on a window on the outside of the door, on a bulletin board outside of the management office, so that posting is clearly visible and accessible at all times to residents. If you have a community hall, recreation hall, or clubhouse, and you're posting at that location, if residents can access those buildings 24/7, say they've got a PIN code or key, it's okay to post inside those buildings as long as the residents can access that 24/7. If it's only open certain hours or the residents' PIN codes only work certain hours, we'd recommend posting again outside of the building or in a window so it can be seen from the outside. Landlords can choose to post in additional places. That's certainly fine if you think, hey, we have this other type of location that would be really great. We have a community bulletin board located somewhere else. You're welcome to post in additional locations, but you do have to post in these locations, even if you post elsewhere. So what if you don't have any of those, what I'm calling primary locations? Our administrative rules for the program give some additional options. So if you don't have resident mailboxes, a rent payment drop box, or community hall, recreational clubhouse, you can post outside every management office. And again, the program rules say outside because it does need to be visible and accessible at all times. You can post at the park entrance. So this might be on a bulletin board at the entrance, on the entrance gate, or on the entrance sign, or a freestanding location at the park entrance. Or you can post on the front of every resident dumpster. So, and this is the front, not the back. We don't want people to have to climb through, 2 feet of snow to get to the back of the dumpster to see the notice. It does need to be on the front. If you don't have any of those primary locations, you don't have any of those secondary locations, our administrative rules do allow landlords to post the notices on their online rent payment portal or other website that is used by residents or intended for use by residents. I will note that posting next to a required location is okay. So we have gotten some feedback that, well, if I put the notices right on the mailboxes, US Postal Service takes them down, or if I put them right on the dumpsters, like the trash company doesn't like it, or they take it off, or it gets damaged. We're okay with posting next to one of those required locations, as long as it is, really at that location and clearly visible and accessible to residents. We at the Division of Housing can help you come up with posting locations. We know there are communities in unique situations and every community is a little bit different. So we can help talk through what some of your options might be. However, we can't exempt you from posting. It is a statutory requirement that the notice be posted in all common areas, and we do not have the authority to say anyone can't, say someone is okay not complying with posting. But we're happy to have those conversations and try to think through creative solutions. So here are some mailboxes or examples of posting at community mailboxes. So I'm gonna go through some acceptable postings from our site visits, some where we found some issues, because I want to give people some visual examples. My intent is not to call out any particular community. We tried to have these as unidentifiable as possible. But if you do recognize your community, kudos for if you're in the good examples, and we're going to work with you if there's some issues with the postings. So in these examples, I wanted to point out, you'll see that all 4 pages are clearly visible and accessible. The notices are protected to a certain extent. So there is either tape or possibly, in the example on the left-hand side, there may be, lamination, plastic over the notices. We do recommend this if you are posting the notices outside because they can get weathered, right? And we know in some communities in the state, we're dealing with a lot of snow in the winter. We had a lot of rainfall this year. So, and this is in our instruction, has been in our instructions each year as well, at least getting some plastic sleeves, from an office supply store, clear tape, simple things you can do to help protect the notices from weathering or potentially being taken down. Here are some examples of postings outside a management office. So in the picture on the left, you'll see there is a posting in a window. Looks like it's directly next to the rent payment drop box. So they may have been posting it in that window because that's a rent payment location, or this may be the secondary location posting at the management office. But it's in the window there. Seems to be a decent height where folks could read it. I mean, that would always be a concern too, is, can folks read it from where it is posted? But it seems like if folks can reach in and make that payment, they can likely read that notice. On the right is another example. So there is a bulletin board that is up next to the door to the management office. It is covered. So there's a porch here in the management office. So this is, I think, protected from the elements by both the roof over the porch and this this case here. But again, it looks like all 4 pages are clearly visible side by side. And the posting is there in English and Spanish. Here is an example of a posting at a park entrance. So in this community, there is a community board near the park entrance. And you'll see on the left, those are the DOLA notices. The Spanish one is on the left, the English one is on the right. They've got all 4 pages. They're visible, legible, not covered up by other postings. And then here are 2 other examples of freestanding postings. So these were communities where maybe they didn't have a management office or, a group mailbox location. They still needed to post in a common area in the park. And so what the community owners or managers did here was set up like a freestanding posting. So this one, it looks like they have on the right, looks like they've got a longer fence post that they added, like a bulletin board or case 2. And then here on the left, they added it to a utility pole. So, just examples of if you don't have buildings or existing structures to post, you're still going to have to meet this requirement for years to come. So putting up a post, a board, a structure will be a way to help ensure that you're in compliance. So the requirement around the notices is not only that they're posted once a year, but that they are maintained. Those postings are maintained year round. So our program rules say that the notices have to remain posted, be clearly visible and accessible all year. And again, you've kind of heard me talking about this means all pages have to be fully visible, accessible in both languages. And what this means is that the community owner or manager may have to repost during the year. They might have to replace notices if they're accidentally damaged or intentionally damaged. They may need to, the landlord may need to remove obstructions. Say something's posted on top of a notice and covering it up, they would have to move that other posting. Landlords may also want to take steps to protect notices from weathering or tampering, as I've mentioned, to reduce the amount of times that they're having to repost or replace notices. So some mistakes we've seen in posting. So these are, well, the first one is we would say a full violation. The notices are not posted at all or are no longer posted at all. The other items on this list are what we are considering partial violations. So they still, issues that still need to be corrected that may result in a penalty, but we're going to reduce the penalty amount because it appears there was compliance and something happened, if that makes sense. So in some cases, we've found that the notices are only posted in one of the required locations. So say the community has 3 group mailbox locations, the notices are only posted at one location. It needs to be at all 3 resident mailbox locations. In some communities, we've seen it only posted in one language. It does have to be posted in English and Spanish, regardless of whether all of the residents speak English or all the residents speak Spanish. It has to be up in both languages. Another issue we've seen is that only the first page is visible. It's really important that both pages are fully visible in both languages. The first page of the notices goes over some general rights and responsibilities under the Mobile Home Park Act that homeowners and residents have. The second page of the notice includes information on for residents or homeowners who may be facing eviction, and information on contacting the program and information on filing a complaint. And so there is different information on each page, and all the information there is there because it's part of what's required by statute. Some other issues or mistakes we've seen is a notice is partially or fully obstructed inside a locked building or an area that's not accessible to residents, or notices are up one day, down the next. We have heard from community owners and managers that they sometimes experience issues with residents potentially tampering with the notices, moving them, removing them. So we do understand that this issue may come up. But one thing we're trying to reinforce through this presentation is that the landlord still does have a responsibility to make sure those notices are up. So protecting the notices from tampering or taking steps to protect them from tampering, or checking the postings on a weekly basis or some other with some type of frequency so that you can get them up if they come down, would be advisable steps for landlords to take. So here are some examples of issues that we found, and again, not trying to call any community out, but trying to provide the visuals to help. So in this case, it looks like the notices were fully posted, but they can no longer be read. So they have been sun damaged, water damaged, otherwise weather damaged. So these are notices that need to be replaced. They can be replaced in the same locations. We just got to get copies that can be read. Here are some examples where there are some pages missing. So on the left-hand side, there are 4 pages, but the first page in the upper left is not part of the DOLA notice. It's some other page. So for whatever reason, I think the second page of the English notice is missing here. So this community would need to potentially move things around in this case, make sure they've got all 4 pages of the DOLA notice here. On the right, it looks like perhaps one set of the notice is falling out of the bottom. So they lost a page, they've got another page maybe going, but they only have 3 out of the 4 pages. So again, we need all 4 posted. Here are some examples where the posting or pages are obstructed. So in the example on the left, we've got almost a full page of the Spanish notice that is obstructed by another community flyer. And on the right, we have got 2 pages of the notice posted that I'm seeing. I don't see the other 2 pages. I just see the first page. And then the English version, which is close to where the lock is in the center of the case, is cut off on both the right and the left. So again, this is an issue that the landlord would need to address. So now the less pleasant part of the conversation, talking about penalties. So what are the consequences if the division learns that the notices are not posted? So there are some significant penalties in our statute for the notices not being posted. These are maximum amounts though, and that's something I want to reinforce. So up to $3,000 is the penalty for a first offense, up to $4,000 for a second offense, and up to $5,000 for a third or subsequent offense. In almost all cases, communities are just getting their first notices this year, potentially through our compliance checks. And in almost all cases, we're not assessing that maximum amount. We're scaling the amount of the penalties and based on guidelines in our program rules. So we're scaling the penalties based on the number of homeowners in the community, which relates to the severity of the violation or the impact on others. We are looking at whether, okay, there were no notices posted, or there was something posted, but there was an issue with it. And if there's something posted, we're going to have a lower penalty than if there was nothing posted. And then we're also looking at cooperation of the community in correcting any issues that are found. So this is our current process. This is not part of statute or rules, but this is part of our internal guidance and how we've decided to address these posting issues and take enforcement actions this year. So right now, when we do a compliance check, we're going to send a first, and if we find an issue, we're going to send a first notice to the park owner by certified mail and email, if we have an email address on file. Please, whether you're an owner or manager, make sure that you're accepting certified mail from the Division of Housing. We send the notices each year by certified mail, and then we send penalty letters by certified mail, and your registration renewal, and subpoenas, if there is a subpoena related to a complaint. So please do accept certified mail from the Division of Housing. If you want to also get that quicker notification, you have and use an email address, please provide that to us, and we'll send you copies of anything we mail by email as well. So after that first notice goes out, the first notice will let the landlord know, hey, here's the issue that we found. If you can fix this in the next week, we're going to reduce the penalty by half. So, great way to get a penalty reduction. Just fix the issue in that 7 days. Send us photos or other evidence that you've corrected it, and we'll cut the penalty in half. After that 7 days passes, we will send out a final penalty notice. So it will either be the original penalty if we didn't get a response, or it'll be a reduced penalty if we did get a response and the issue was addressed. And then the community will have 30 days after that second letter to pay the penalty. Payments can be made online through your park's online account, or can be made by check mailed to the division. And there will be instructions on how you can pay in that penalty final letter. A note on one of the changes in the law that took place last year: a community will not be able to increase lot rent if the community has unpaid penalties. So really encourage anyone who gets this penalty letter, 1, respond in 7 days, you'll get reduced by half. 2, pay the penalty sooner rather than later, so you're not included in that list of communities that are restricted from increasing rent due to unpaid penalties. If the program does not get a penalty payment after penalty is final, within those 30 days, we may place a lien on the mobile home park and or send the penalty to collections. So those are the more serious steps in the process. Hopefully less work for you all, less work for us, if we can just get it paid, taken care of, and move on. So what if you object to the penalty, object to the division's findings? So this is the appeal process. If you get a penalty letter for failing to post the required DOLA notices. So first step, contact us in writing to explain any mitigating circumstances. If you need 8 days instead of 7 days to correct the issue, you provide us a good reason why, we'll likely consider a penalty reduction for you still. If there's something else that happened that explains why the notices aren't there, you're welcome to reach out to us and explain what's going on. Depending on the information you provide, cooperation with the program, we may reduce the penalty further. We are unlikely to waive the penalty entirely, however, if a violation was present. And that goes back to the language in the statute that says the division shall enforce a penalty if we discover the notice was not posted. So please feel free to have conversations with us about penalty reductions, quickest thing to do, best thing to do is fix the issue. We'll cut the penalty in half. But just know we're unlikely to waive the penalty unless exceptional circumstances apply. For this particular penalty assessment, there is no appeal right in our statute through the Office of Administrative Courts. So on the complaint side of our program, if we issue a notice of violation or notice of non-violation against a resident homeowner or a landlord, either of those parties can ask for an administrative hearing through the Office of Administrative Courts. But that's specific to notices of violation or non-violation through our complaint program. The statute does not include that hearing right for penalties. A penalty final letter is instead a final agency action. And under administrative law, individuals can appeal final agency actions by filing a case in district court. Again, we hope we don't get there. We hope we can get some reductions and quick resolution, but just so you know what your appeal rights are. So here is contact information for the program at the top of this slide for myself and for our 2 compliance investigators. Most of the communications for related to the compliance checks and penalty assessments are coming directly from our compliance investigators. So, if you've got to put Lindsay and Stephen in your safe sender list or your not spam list, please go ahead and do so. We do have a second level of review as well for all of the penalty assessments. So if there are appeals, concerns, Lindsay and Stephen are also bringing that to me to look at and weigh in on. Say thank you to everybody who's been participating in the chat and everyone on my team who's been providing answers. I want to open it up to other questions. One thing I'll say real quick is we have not sent out penalty letters to all of the parks that I identified in the chart that have where we identified a compliance issue. So we are sending these letters out in batches to manage, the communications and follow-up. So if you're not sure, if your community hasn't posted, we've been to your county. If you haven't been to your county, good thing to go ahead and check it, have your on-site manager check it. And then in the event there is a penalty letter that comes for a compliance check we've already done, you've already got it corrected. And so you can get that penalty reduction right away. So I see question in the chat. Do landlords have to mail out the notices annually? There are requirements in our program rules, and this is in the instructions for the notices as well, that yes, landlords have to share a copy of the notice with homeowners and residents each year. And with every new lease that's signed. So we didn't go over the sharing requirements in this presentation, but they are in the instructions. So what I anticipate most communities will do or should do is when we send that updated notice out, you get it end of November, plan on sharing it with residents through posting, mailing, or email as described in the program rules. Any other questions, folks on the phone? You can press *9 to raise your hand. Other folks can raise their hand in the app. Anything that wasn't addressed in the chat already, please let me know. We will be sending the notices with registration renewal packets at the end of November. She should get them last week in November, first week of December. For those parks that have whose registration is expiring February 1st or March 1st. If you're expiring April 1st or later, you'll just get the homeowner notice packet end of November, beginning of December, and you'll get your registration packet around 60 days before your expiration date. So Nathan, I see a question in the chat about the rent increase prohibition. There is an FAQ page on our website on rent increases that goes into some of those timing questions. What happens if I already sent out a rent increase notice and then I have a penalty, and how to get that addressed. Yep. So thank you, Cassie, for just providing a link to that. But there is some guidance there. If you don't see the answer to your question in those FAQs, please feel free to follow up by email, and we'll help you work through what the issue is. I see a question about whether folks will be able to get a copy of the chat. I am not sure if that will be included in the recording or what we post. What I can do is look through and see if there were questions and answers in the chat that we can add to some FAQs or answers to frequently asked questions on our website. One thing I forgot to mention is the division does provide copies of the notices in Braille upon request. So we don't mail out Braille versions of the notices to everyone to save on costs. But if you have a resident who requests a copy of the notice in Braille, contact us and we'll send that to you. So the instructions on sharing the notices and how your options for sharing those are also posted on the resources page of our website. In the instructions that go along with the homeowner notice. So there are a few options for sharing the notices. One is posting on homeowner stores instead of mailing. This is a required notice. So I do not anticipate that it would require 48 hours notice to the resident before posting on their door, because this is a required notice if you're sharing a copy of this notice. This is our main resources page. Just a heads up that we are going through some website updates at the division to try to make actually all of Department of Local Affairs web pages more consumer friendly, make it easier to search and find information. So just a heads up that things may move, but will be available on our website, and we're always happy to help share items by email or to send copies of things by post mail if you reach out to us with a request. On the resources page, there is a specific bar that here, I'll share my screen so everybody can see it. There is a specific bar that opens up. It says homeowner and resident rights. It's got the posting instructions in English and Spanish, the most recent copy of the notice. We also have audio recordings that read the notice. If you have someone who is visually impaired and they want to listen to the notice, maybe they don't read Braille, these audio recordings are on our website. So you could play it for them in the office. Like if they came in and asked for that, we can send them the links to the recordings. And then here's information on how to request copies of the notice in Braille. So question about whether there is a primary way that we're communicating with communities that are on that rent increase prohibition list. The main way we are communicating that a community may not be allowed to increase rent is when we send out a penalty notice or a notice that a park's registration is expired. So in those penalty letters now, all of our penalty letters say rent increase is likely prohibited, because you have a penalty, because you you don't have an active registration with the program. So communities, when they get those notices in the mail, again, we're sending those penalty notices by certified mail and then by email if we have an email address on file. That is how communities should be being notified or are being notified that they may not be permitted to increase rent until the issue is corrected. That public list on our website, we're updating about once a month. So there may be a little bit of a time lag there, but we have been updating that monthly. If you are not sure if you have an active registration or if you have an unpaid penalty, there are a couple ways you can check. One is if you set up an online account for registering your park, you can log into your online account and check if your registration is active, hasn't expired. Also see if there are any payments that might be that appear in your account for penalties that haven't been paid. You can also contact us and we're happy to provide that information. and our registration team. So Cassie Vandermeer, who has been on the chat, helping answer questions, is our registration program administrator. They can help you out with all questions related to, you know, your parks registration or any penalties. So the online accounts can be set up through our registration page. To get an online
Christina?
account, yeah,
No, they
Kathy,
can't. We took that link down.
I was just thinking through that. So we're making some updates over the next month and a half. So to the my account page and to the registration form, which is through Salesforce. So Cassie, my account is down as not available right now as well. I know the registration form itself is not.
They can still log in if they have an active account. What they can't do is necessarily create their own account, because then it creates a whole new account on our back end. So they have to email us to asking to be set up, and then we set them up, and then they can log in and they can see everything.
Yeah. Yeah, I was going to mention, if you have not had an online account before, to contact us and our registration team will get that set up for you. So that's at our program email address, which is MHPOP for Mobile Home Park Oversight Program at state.co.us. Any other questions that folks have? Okay, well, thank you everyone for joining. We appreciate everyone's time today and hope we can all work together to support strong manufactured housing communities in Colorado.